Hello, welcome back to the ministry, and this is Taj McCameron, and today, finally, we're doing it. Remember, I told y'all I had a movie that I wanted to do so bad for y'all because the Lord gave me revelation. Well, today we are doing it, okay? Today, we are doing The Last Witchhunter. And let me tell you, the day that I watched this movie, I was lollygagging, just going around. It was about that time of night where I was about to cut the TV off. But if you've noticed how these movie reviews go, the movies that I usually choose that I don't want to watch, or the TV shows, or whatever it is, I end up turning the TV off and turning it back on. Well, this particular night, I was about to turn the TV off, and I flipped through the stations, and I saw this movie, and I was like, the name Witch is in it. I don't know whether I'm supposed to watch this, Lord, because I get kind of cynical as a Christian, that sometimes I'm like, I don't be want to watch no horror movie or nothing like that or anything in relation to it, but I just didn't feel compelled to turn the TV off. And it wasn't scary. So I was sitting there, I was like, what is this film? And the Lord let me sit there and watch it. And as it started, I was like, oh, because as we know, we've been dealing with certain things, and I'm about to get into that. This is what's going to make this so good, okay? So, I wasn't expecting to watch this movie. When the film starts, we're off in the middle of like a snow tundra out in, I don't even know where that was. They never said, if I recall, but it was way back in time. Anywhere from 1500 to 1800 years ago. Okay? And you had this grouping of people that were dressed like Vikings heading towards this cave. It's the deep of winter, and they're trekking on foot in this tundra. So once they reach the cave, they went into the depths with torches. Now, I have an interesting statement about this. I wasn't never thinking to watch this movie. It wasn't never on my mind. But this was a confirmation to let me know that I was supposed to watch this movie, because as the guy was walking through the cave, I had a flash, and it had been anywhere from 1 week before that to 2 weeks before that I woke up one morning and I saw a torch. I said, a torch? Why am I seeing a torch, God? And it was like a grouping of people walking with torches, and I'm like, and when I saw the movie, I was like, whoa. And it didn't even dawn on me while I was watching the movie that I had a vision of people walking with torches just like they were walking in that cave. I was like, it came to me when I was writing the note for the film. I was like, oh, Lord, you wanted me to watch that film. Because it was the exact same image. Because at first I was thinking, are you talking about lampstands? What are you trying to say, Lord, when I've had the vision the first time? And I also heard loud alarms in my ear at the time that I had the vision of the torches. I was like, okay. Getting back to the word, they got deep into the cave that the witch they were trying to track was in. Okay? They got in there, and she's like not really like a being. She's like, if I could describe her, she is like a decrepit old being that is like she's part of the wood encasing or encased by a tree. And I'm about to explain this. It's about to get good. She is so decrepit that her face is like cracking. She looks like the equivalent of one of them zombies you see in like a movie, or anybody ever watched The Walking Dead, how them zombies look where their faces are all shriveled up. Yeah, it's like that. But you can tell she's an old being. So she's been around for a while. Her hair is stringy and matted, okay? It looks like it's covered in earth. You understand what I'm saying? Now, we know that through history of time that wind, water, earth, and fire are all elements that witches use, right? Well, this woman is part of this tree. All right. Now, the first thing I got from this, which is going to get me to get the scriptures. Hold on one second. Now, the scripture that I'm going to read from in a moment is Revelations 12. Okay. That's the first thing I thought about. The second thing I thought about is our good old friend Jezebel. She was a dominating woman whose spirit was intimidation. Okay. This woman, and I'm going to go into it in a moment. I'm being reminded the other night, it had been about 2-3 weeks ago, maybe even 4. Story Television did a documentary. They do documentaries on the weekend sometime where they talk about the Bible. I half listen to their documentaries, and this is the reason why. Because they bring rabbis and scientists and people that are supposed to dispute the Bible's reasons, and then they mix mythology in with the word. But sometimes it's a good thing to listen to that, and it isn't, because for one, it allows you the ability, if you actually study the word, that you can pick the Bible up, and when they talking foolery, you can pick it up and say, wait, y'all just added a whole bunch of foolery. Let me go in this word and figure out. It's a great way to teach you how to test the word when they be talking foolery like that. But it brought my attention to some scriptures that I wasn't off the top of my head familiar with. So sometimes I'll be listening to it or have it playing in the background. I'm like, that's mythology, but they just mentioned this scripture. What is that scripture? And then I pick up the Bible and I will start reading the scripture that they were talking about. No longer paying attention to what they were actually talking about. Anyway, when it comes down to it, and the word, well, they did a show on Jezebel. They did one on the woman who asked for John's head, Eve, and it was another woman that they talked about. I can't think of off the top of my head. And they were talking about, because they gonna always try to make out like these women weren't evil, but I think Vashti. They mentioned Vashti. But in that, they were talking about Jezebel. When we think about spiritually these women. The first one we think about is Jezebel, who is a dominating person. Now, this individual, as we know, was the daughter of who? Baal. If you so in First Kings, it tells the story in 18, starting at 19. I'm trying to make sure I get to the right part. Okay. So now, therefore, send and gather the Israelites to me in the Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah who are at Jezebel's table. So this was more so when Elisha killed all the prophets, which technically you can look at it in this passage in comparison to the film, that it was the what seemed to Jezebel what's the word I'm looking for? Elisha making a fool of her. Okay? Now we know that Jezebel is the daughter of Baal. She was taught and raised up in these witchcraft practices, right? So, first thing right there, let's just pay attention to the fact that there is what's the word I'm looking for? Level of like, how I'll put this? It's a level of generational curse right there, because Baal is Jezebel's father, and Jezebel ended up having a daughter named Athaliah. I always say that name wrong. Okay. And this is a generational curse. Now, I'm going to dig deeper in that a little bit later, but I am going to bring it up here. That there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about the sins of the father, which would have been Baal, is reproduced upon the children for the next 7 generations. Now, if you read in Hosea, okay, Hosea 2 talks about Baal's wife, which would be who? Jezebel's mother. In certain translation, it is Baal talking to his wife. In other translation, it is God talking to the sinful behaviors of the land. Okay? So it's like God's letter of judgment to the behaviors of the land. But in what version was I reading today? I was looking at the NLT this morning in my phone, and in that it was talking about the Lord's view upon the people. But in this Bible, this is King James Bible. It's backwards, I know, but in this one, it is the talking of Baal towards his wife. Okay. Now, with that being said, her being an adulterous woman, her sins, all of these kinds of things. So you look at it generationally to that capacity. I'm not going to go deep into that right now. Okay. But I want to give you the understanding. You can go read it for yourself in the King James version, that Hosea, and I talked about this in the Word the Mother, but a lot of people don't understand that There are generational things that are in place. And I'm going to dig into that a little bit later. But with these generational toxic habits, traits, situations, scenarios, so on and so forth, that it comes through the bloodline. With it having come through the bloodline like this, you will see treacherousness and all these kinds of things happen generationally. A curse is something that was, because I was literally sitting before the Lord because I was frustrated yesterday. I was so angry yesterday. Oh my God. It comes back and forth. I'm going to get into that later. Okay? I'm going to get into that later. But I was asking God how you cut it off. And the curse, he showed me something, which ties right into this film. The witch came out of a tree. Now, I'm going to see if I can find a photograph of this tree. Hold on one second. There is a tree that literally looks like, let me see if I can get it to do it, because this tree, if you see this tree is a sycamine tree. You see how twisted and worn the roots are on the bottom? That it's literally deeply rooted into the ground, okay? This is like the tree that you saw the witch come out of in that film, okay? I wanted to make that point. Now, the sycamine tree. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about the sycamine tree. Let me get it for you. Funny enough, the scripture on the sycamine tree is actually the latter half of the scripture we always say, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed. It's the latter part of this verse. Luke 17:6 says, if ye have faith the grain of a mustard seed, ye may say unto the sycamine tree, be thou plucked up by the root, and be thou planted in the sea. Okay? The sycamine tree having the foliage of a mulberry tree, but fruit. So, with that being said, this is a deeply rooted tree, all right? This woman in this film, that is the witch, is ingrained in this tree. Wherever the tree is, she has access to it. Now, in the film, her body isn't just a witch. It's part snake, which brings us back to, no pun intended, Revelations. Going back to Revelations. Where was I? Yes, Revelations. In this scripture, we hear about the woman. But I'm not concerned about the woman right now. I'm concerned about what came up out the water. Now, in Revelations 12, it says the dragon. First, the dragon knocks all the stars out the sky. Then, he is thrown down to earth. Let's see. Not the dragon. It's the serpent. Okay. The serpent she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness to the place where she is to be nourished. Now, as we know, the serpent made its first appearance to who? Eve. And notice that the serpent always seems to be chasing after the woman. But the serpent is the spirit you always hear me call Levi. For Levathian. I'm not saying the name right now. If you knew what happened to me every time I say that name, you will understand. This spirit operates in twisting. Twists words, twists things, and it's well talked about in the scripture in Revelations, because it is the spirit that tries to drown the woman twice. They had to send the woman into the wilderness 2 occasions. We always hear about the first for the 1,260 days, but she's sent right back as soon as she comes out with her wings. That the serpent chases her back into the wilderness and God keeps her there for a period of time. Some of y'all been held in places and spaces by the Lord. And you was wondering, well, I was in the wilderness before. That was a long season. And he said I could come out. I came out with revelation and he drove me right back in. Why did he do that? This type of spirit. And in this season, we've been seeing is 2 different people I've seen talking about that Satan is the accuser of the brethren right now. There has been a level of accusation unlike no other. Why? Because Levi is mad. Okay? Because when they cannot stop you, they will try to create insinuation and assault toward you. I'm going to dig deeper into that in a moment. But there's also revelation in Job. I don't want to look at it in there. I'm going to look at it in here. But I'm going to show you another tree because the Lord gave me a diagram that he wants me to talk about. Okay. And why am I looking in that? I'm looking for Job. He gave me a diagram he wants me to talk about. And we're going to dig into that. But Job, there it is. 41 speaks of, is it 41? Can you catch Levi with a hook or put the noose around his jaw? Can you tie it with a rope through the nose or pierce its jaw with a spike? Will it beg you for mercy or implore you for pity? Will it agree to work for you to be your slave for life? There's a whole bunch of descriptions right in there, but this is the NLT version of Job 41. Okay. With that being said, the only thing that can destroy Levi is God himself. He has to do that. All right. So with that being said, this is why that woman ended up having to be driven into the wilderness for 1,260 days. Okay. She comes out with wings and the spirit tries to drown her. But something very interesting that I figured out was that when you see at the end of that scripture point, he can't drown her because God himself sucks the water down into the back into the ground. He slithers off to go find her what? Children. Why does that make sense? I'm going to make that make sense in a moment. But before I dig deeper into this film, I'm going to show you the tree that God showed me when he had me do this the other day. Start writing the notes for this the other day. I had a migraine the whole time I was trying to write these notes. You see this tree right here? I got a whole bunch of notes in there. Yeah, that's a tree. That's a sycamore tree. All right. When I was writing the notes for this film, when I tell you I had the worst, worst headache trying to get these notes together for this film. And from that point, they're trying to fight this witch. So they attempt to fight her with the weapons of which they have. And they were being thrown around like rag dolls, which reminds me yet again of Jezebel, who she used the pen that she had the ability to use under Ahab's authority, because as we recall, Jezebel literally is someone that will use the authority of the person that she is associated with to usurp authority because the man is weak. And I'm sorry if you did not recognize some of your men. It's not that they're weak men, but when they were underneath of the curse in relation to the way that their family bloodlines work, this spirit was overpowering them, okay? They had no power in these relationships. Stephanie P did a video on that, and she dug deeper into that. I'm going to link that in the community post. So, they're in the cave. This witch, she consumes them within her roots. The roots of, recall, the tree consumes her and consumes them in the roots of the tree. So, with the roots of this tree, but when they did the work, that she tried to grab them with mental warfare. What has been one of the main reasons that our kingdom spouses have been taking so long to get to us? Double-mindedness. Why? Because they have been stuck in a level of mental warfare, okay? With the level of mental warfare that they were under, literally, it was a battlefield of the mind, which brings us back to Revelations 12 that talks about when Michael, now the war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent. Remember, I told you she looked like a serpent in her body. Was thrown, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in the heavens say, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of Christ have come, from the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, who accused them day and night before God, and they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives even upon death. Rejoice, O heaven, and you that dwell therein. But woe to you on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in the great wrath because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon now saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman. Pausing. The pursuit of the woman, because you're the strongest head in your marriage. And this just came to me today while I was reading this. You're the strong one in your marriage. So what would Satan want to pursue? You. He wants to destroy who? You. He does not want you to have full operation because you're the strong one. And once you gain revelation on that and fullness of your identity of that, oh, he mad now. So, what does he do? He creates warfare. Joyce Myers did a book called Battlefield of the Mind. I actually listened to the audiobook of that. Very good book. Anyway, in order to create illusions, while they were fighting this woman, she was creating illusions. She was reminding them of people that had passed away. She had given them visions. She had given the one guy, his wife and his daughter had passed away, and she was making him see his daughter. And he was sitting up there hugging a dead tree root. Some of your God-ordained spouses have been dealing with this spirit of illusion. It's called bewitchment. Thank you, James A. Solomon, who did he did a teaching on bewitchment in Covered by God with Tiffany Montgomery. Bewitchment. It makes you feel like you're out of your mind. These men have been dealing with coming back to the sycamore tree. Remember the tree? See all that twisted stuff that's in there? There are actually words in there I've written down, and it's something I got to show you guys, and I'm going to talk about it towards the end of me doing this review. That's going to make a lot of stuff make a lot of sense, okay? But there has been a war in this man, and it's a tree that has a curse at the root that created the trunk of the tree. But once the tree's root, or shall I say trunk, was created, it had deep roots. The roots have stems coming off of the roots, meaning everything that is individual lined has other things that stem off of them. And then they have like the things that are coming off the top part, because if you actually saw the film, the tree that I just showed you is similar to the way that the tree was in the film. It's more like the sycamore tree I showed you the photograph of, okay? But